Hey, this is Katy Chandler again, and I'm here to talk to you about harvesting garlic. It is round about that time of year. I like to think of planting garlic around Halloween and harvesting around 4th of July. That helps me keep it kind of generally in the right direction. So I'm going to talk to you about 4 things today. One is, how do you know when to harvest the garlic? And the third is, what do you do with the garlic and the bed once you actually have harvested? And then the fourth one is, of course, I have to show you a couple books. Okay, so step one is, how do you know when to harvest garlic? And it is variety and location dependent. Some varieties of garlic go much earlier or much later, and of course the environment and the hot and the water have a big impact on that as well. So the thing that you want to look for is the number of green leaves. So let's look at this one right here. This one is a chestnut variety. It's a hard neck. You can see I harvested off the scape earlier. That's what this hard thing is. And what I'm looking for is how many green leaves, because that indicates how much skin is over the top of the garlic below, and that helps you know how long you're going to be able to store that piece of garlic for, or that head of garlic. So right here we can see this one is just about totally done, so I'm not going to count that one. This one, it has a dry tip, but that's normal. It should be dying back. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 green garlic leaves. Tell us that there's 5 papers around that head of garlic down below. That is a time when you can harvest and be sure that you're going to have a nice long time in storage. So if it's a thing of garlic, a head of garlic that you intend to store, then you definitely want to harvest at this point. You can also harvest a little later. And you can see in the same bed I have totally different situations, and that is largely because I had a really bad irrigation failure. And so some of you might have a similar problem where you either didn't water enough or your irrigation didn't work. And so this whole section died back much earlier. So you can look here at this one. This one, number one, it's going to be a smaller bulb. You can just see the plant is smaller. But these guys have died back. We have this one, which doesn't really count because it's now gotten so yellow and dry. But we got this one, and then maybe that one. So we're down to very little paper around this garlic. So there, like all things garden, there's kind of, there's some general rules, and then it's personality and sort of an art form. So you can harvest this garlic right now. And the thing is that I would recommend eating it soon, because it's dry. It's not gonna, because it only has maybe that one skin, it's not gonna store for as long. So then you wanna gobble this one up right away, which usually is not a problem. You can also harvest that other garlic that I showed. You can harvest then. And some people harvest even earlier. There's a wide range. The thing to know is that the less green you have, the less time it will store. The more green you have, the more time it will store. And it's really, after that, it's sort of a personality thing about how, what you want. A lot of people say 4 to 6 leaves is ideal for harvesting. All right, so now, how do we harvest? There's a few different ways. If you have this little potato fork, I'm super in love with these for harvesting garlic. If you don't, you can also use like a shovel, or even your hand, or a small trowel. I'm going to show you with this first. So step one is, I just want to pull that back just so I can show you better. You're going to want to go outside of the bulb. So see how my potato fork is several inches away from the bulb where the plant goes in? I'll just go down like that, and that means that I'm not going to hit that bulb, and I'm just going to push back a little bit, and all that does is loosen up the dirt around the roots, and there you go. Hey bulb, hi little garlic. Isn't it fun? It is like the best. It's like harvesting potatoes. I don't know if you've ever done that, but it's like you don't really know what's going on under there, and then you get it, and it's like a little Christmas present. So you can do that for using this guide. The great thing about it is that you can see I didn't really disrupt the soil at all, or hardly at all, and that keeps the ecology of the soil much better. Now, one thing that I realized I just forgot to tell you is that it's much easier to harvest when the soil is dry. You can see like the soil just came right off of there, right? So I have turned off my water, and if you're doing it by hand, just stop watering. One of my mentors, Arnold from down in Washoe Valley, he says to wait 2 weeks, and there's 2 reasons to do that. One is it makes it very easy to harvest, and 2 is it actually forces the bulb to be like, oh man, I'm dying. Let me get my reproductive juices focused here in the bulb, which is where it's going to do most of its reproduction. So he suggests 2 weeks. I have only been doing it for a couple weeks a couple days, because I had let it go too long and now it's really dry. So I wanted to make sure that I pull them up now. So if you want to do the same thing with a shovel, you just push it out, be very careful to stay away from the bulb, and with your hand you can just kind of dig around, and then eventually you'll be able to pull it out. Like I'll show you right here. You can just kind of, you can see how dry this dirt is. It's nuts. And there it is right there. Oh, it's such a pretty one. Okay. So that's how to know when to harvest, how to harvest, and then the last one is what to do once you have harvested. So the first thing is, with the garlic itself, you're gonna hang it up, put them in, depending on how many you have, you might put them in bundles of anywhere from, I don't know, 8 to 10 or 12 garlic heads. You're gonna hang them, wrap up a string like that, around it, hang it so that they're kind of at different levels, and then you want to hang it in a place that is both dry and has a nice little breeze and is completely out of the sun. You don't ever want it touching the sun, because the same way that you roast garlic and it tastes so yummy, you will do the same, and then it becomes, you know, you can't use it for either planting next year or eating. It'll just kind of rot itself. But speaking of which, I always find the best bulbs, the very best ones, and pull them out for seed for the next year. It's kind of hard to deal with because you want to eat that good one, but you want to find your very best ones and save those for the fall when we'll plant again. Okay. Other part is, so that's what you do right after with the garlic itself, but what you do with the bed is, now it's the middle of summer, it's burning hot, and you don't want to leave soil open and naked right now, because this is when it's going to dry out and be the worst for the soil ecology. So what you want to do is, there's a number of things. One, you can just cover it with mulch. So cover it back up with straw, water it down, and just leave it like that, and you can deal with it later. You can also plant things in it. One thing that I often plant is buckwheat. Yana taught me how to, that buckwheat is a really great plant because for this time of year, because it actually will grow in the heat It will germinate in the heat. So buckwheat is a great one. Another one that Bill Mewalt just told me this year, and which I'm going to try but I never have, is planting squash. And that I have a terrible time with squash because of the squash bugs. He said that might help me just having it at a different time of year. Okay, and now for the fourth thing, which is related to the heat. It's my books. So first thing I want to show you, this is a really good book, Growing Food in a Hotter, Drier Land. And this is a really powerful book about both dealing with the reality that climate change is happening, and we're dealing with heat that we haven't dealt with before, as I'm sure you're all experiencing like me, but it also has some practical suggestions for how to deal with that. And then the other one, I haven't actually read this, but it reminds me so much of Reno in that if you looked at Reno, like the canopy, the tree canopy in Reno, like I have because I was part of the Urban Forestry Commission just for a wee bit, but we looked at a map of where the trees were in the city, and it literally follows almost perfectly wealth. So the poorer the zones, the fewer the trees. The wealthier the zones, the more trees there are. And the fact is that the more trees there are, the better we're able to deal with climate change, because it significantly reduces the heat and keeps a whole different climate underneath it. So in fact, I was just perusing, this is a National Geographic for this month, Beating the Heat, and it looks at that very question in Los Angeles. And since Reno is one of the hottest, how do you say, it's getting hotter at a rate faster. It's the fastest warming, or one of the fastest warming cities in the world, I think, or at least in the United States. I don't have that fact, but in any case, it's going fast. So learning about how to deal with that as it relates to trees, which of course I love plants, so that's a good one. I'm interested to read that article. And since we're burning up, I thought I'd share with you those two books. Okay, good luck. I hope you got great garlic, and yeah, please share. I'm excited to hear about it. Take care.